eXp Revenue Share has changed drastically thanks to several changes which have swayed the compensation model by millions of dollars literally overnight. Which, given those changes, every single video that you see here on YouTube about eXp Revenue Share is outdated, including mine. So today, let's address those changes, but more than that, let's actually start from the beginning and explain everything that eXp Revenue Share is and everything that it isn't. So let's start off with what is revenue share. The eXp Sustainable Revenue Share Plan exists to provide a financial incentive to the agents with eXp who have helped grow sales within the eXp family of real estate brokerage companies. The revenue share plan aims to pay out 50% of company dollar to agents who help eXp sales grow by attracting fellow agents to join its ranks. In short, every single agent at eXp Realty has the ability to access revenue share. All the agent has to do is to sponsor an agent joining the brokerage. And as that sponsored agent starts producing sales, the sponsor gets to participate in that revenue share. Now I have a full breakdown later on in this video down to the very penny on how much you can earn with revenue share. For now, what I really wanted to convey is the main point of revenue share, which essentially is no different than getting compensated for the introduction that you made, introducing the agent to the brokerage. All right, so now let's go a little bit deeper. Why is revenue share such a big deal? What has made the revenue share model so unique that has allowed eXp Realty to become the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the world? Now, sure, the money has a lot to do with that growth. However, that doesn't tell the entire picture. Because while there's astronomical numbers where there's agents out there making over $1 million in revenue share for one single month, that is not everybody at eXp. So that, of course, is not a realistic expectation. That just will not happen for just about any other agent that joins. Now, I also have a lot of personal friends that are also making over $100,000 per month, but that too is not truly realistic. Now, you're gonna see the math for yourself later on in this video so you can assess if this is something that you can realistically obtain for yourself. The actual reason that revenue share took off in such a drastic way was because of the amazing product that eXp Realty is, and also you as a real estate agent are already doing everything that can make you successful with revenue share. Meaning you don't have to go and do something completely radically different than what you already are, which is selling real estate. So as long as you continue being a real estate professional, closing more deals, meeting other real estate agents, them inquiring about eXp, you sharing a bit of information about eXp, when they join and name you as their sponsor, you're pretty much done. They're moving forward, the revenue share continues to build in a passive way for you. And very quickly, if you're purposeful, the passive income that you're generating through revenue share can exceed any personal production that you do. And to really highlight the uniqueness to the model, let's compare the model of revenue share versus the traditional wealth building model in traditional real estate. First, you get into real estate and start making a few sales. Then you become really good to where you have so much more business that you can handle yourself. So you either open up your own independent brokerage or buy a franchise brokerage, which both versions require a significant amount of money to get started, which includes commercial leases, build out, other business startup costs, not only physically, but also legally. Then after you open up shop, you still have to recruit agents to partner with you, which that in and of itself is half the battle. Once you recruit somebody, you have to onboard them, you have to train them and work your hardest to retain those agents. So before you saw any profits, and I mean absolutely any profits, you're in the hole thousands and thousands of dollars. But now let's look at the revenue share model that eXp Realty deployed. Under the revenue share model, you accelerated the startup time, you removed the startup cost, you removed liability, and you removed the need to onboard and train. So realistically, an agent that wants to focus on this part of their business can get up and going with revenue share pretty quickly. Truly, the only thing the eXp agent has to do to start participating in revenue share is asking their agent friends if they have heard about eXp Realty. And if those agents are interested in learning more about the brokerage and ultimately end up joining, then the agent that introduced them to the brokerage is now their sponsor. Now, is revenue share truly passive income? Well, the reason that eXp revenue share is sold as passive income by many real estate agents out there is because for all intents and purposes, the sponsor doesn't really have a lot of requirements to complete. Now, personally, do I feel that sponsors need to be way more engaged, way more active, and way more present with the agents that they sponsor? Well, yes, I do. Now, not everybody feels this way, so they build a revenue share organization radically different than the way that I do. But I digress. At the end of the day, it is what it is. As long as the sponsor is named the sponsor from the beginning, the sales that happen from that agent that is sponsored, well, they are benefiting the sponsor regardless. And where it really starts becoming more passive and a larger revenue stream is in the duplication, where the agent that is sponsored goes on to sponsor other agents, and that continues to happen over and over again. And that cycle can repeat itself up to 7 levels. So very quickly, the original sponsoring agent can find themselves truly not being that hands-on with the agents that get sponsored. And in many instances, as the group continues to grow into hundreds and thousands of agents, the original sponsoring agent might not know 99% of the revenue share group. So it truly becomes a passive income source where they don't have to worry about the support or training of the real estate agents as they continue to grow. Now, to be fair, there are very few groups out there that don't operate this model. As an example, for our group, the Agent First Group, we provide our agents 5 key things. We provide community, support, training, resources, and services. So we're very involved with the production of our agents. We help our agents not only get into production as quickly as possible, but we help them scale their real estate business. This is why Franco is able to close 35 transactions every single month from YouTube. In the same way, Phyllis is able to leverage Facebook groups to close 20 plus transactions every single month. Now, I did feel it important to make that distinction because in the past, at eXp, the culture was of sponsoring and leaving, meaning that as soon as an agent went through the door and got sponsored, well, the sponsor generally wasn't around to support that agent all that much. So that's why we built our revenue share group completely different. That's why we have an internal staff of 15 people that I personally pay every single month to support our agents. So personally, for me, it truly isn't as passive because I'm so involved with our agents. But under our model, our agents in the Agent First Group are able to leverage my internal staff. So that's why our agents are able to grow their revenue share group so much quicker because they're able to leverage all of that and start making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month from revenue share alone. But now let's look at the math. Let's look at exactly how revenue share works. The split at eXp is 80-20, 80% for the agent and 20% for the brokerage. And that split remains in place until the agent reaches the $16,000 cap every single year. And as referenced earlier, the revenue share plan aims to pay out 50% of company dollar to agents who help eXp's sales grow by attracting fellow agents to join its ranks. And as defined in the ICA, company dollar is that dollar amount typically equivalent to 20% of GCI that eXp retains from commissions earned on closed transactions. So in plain English, that 20% that goes to the brokerage gets divided in half. 10% goes to keep the lights on and keep operations and all that fun stuff going. And the other 10% goes to fund the revenue share program. And now we get to the famous revenue share chart. Trust me when I say this, I did not get this the first time, or the second time, or the third time. It took me a while, and I mean a long while, to fully understand this chart. So I recognize it's a little bit intimidating and it could be very frustrating to get a full grasp on it. So my goal here in this particular section is to fully unpack it for you. So hang in there with me. My goal here is to make it the most comprehensive breakdown of this particular revenue share chart because I recognize, again, it can be overwhelming, it can be confusing, but we're gonna take our time with it. On the first column, you're gonna see tier 1, tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the best way to explain this is when you sponsor one agent, you personally, they're gonna be on tier 1. Now, once they go and sponsor another agent, that agent that they go on to sponsor is now on your tier 2. And it continues to happen all the way through tier 7. So this means that technically in levels, and again, we're just talking about levels, not the entire revenue share organization, you're looking at 7 distinct possible agents, which again is assuming that one agent sponsored another agent and sponsored an agent. So they limited themselves to one sponsorship, which by the way, there's no limit to the amount of agents that you can sponsor, which is why some of the revenue share groups here in our organization are so massive. The second column is the expansion share percentage of AGCI, which stands for adjusted gross commission income. So as you can see, at each one of these tiers, there's a certain percentage that comes back to you in the form of revenue share. And the reason that you see 3 slashes on tier 1 is because that tier is actually a 3.5% across the entire level. Now this is going to make more sense here in a little bit. The important thing to recognize here is that every single agent in your revenue share up until they go on to cap is going to provide some revenue share with you as they're closing transactions. Now the amount and size of that is going to depend on the percentages. So let's continue. The third column is the exponential share percentage of AGCI, which again stands for adjusted gross commission income. Now the main thing that you're going to notice between these two columns is the drastic difference between the two. As an example, in tier 3, you're going to see that the difference between the two columns is from 0.1% to 2.4%. So you're talking a huge difference between the two. Now before we talk about the fourth column, let's do some quick math. Let's assume that you sponsored an agent directly. So that agent would be on your tier 1. And we already established that this particular tier is going to pay out 3.5%. So if there's a $10,000 commission that agent goes on to earn, you are receiving $350 on that transaction. It really is that simple. This is way different than profit share, which we'll talk about later on with another brokerage out there that popularized that model. Now for me, this tier 1 gave me no problem, no issues. It was very simple to understand, at least for me. When we started talking about the second tier, third tier, fourth tier, and onward, that became problematic. So to better understand how to actually calculate the rest of the tiers, we need to explain that fourth column, which is the FLQA count needed. Now, what does FLQA stand for? Well, it stands for Frontline Qualifying Active Agent. This entire fourth column is referencing the amount of agents that you personally have sponsored. This is what eXp refers to as the front line. So if you personally sponsor 5 agents, they're going to be labeled one of 2 ways. They're either going to be labeled FLAs, which stands for Frontline Agent, point blank, that's it, or FLQA, Frontline Qualifying Active Agent. Well, at this point, you might be thinking, well, what the heck is the difference? Well, here it is. A Frontline Qualifying Active Agent is a licensed agent who has been sponsored into eXp and that has been active and productive with eXp during the prior rolling 6-month period by closing a minimum of $5,000 in gross commission income. In order to unlock exponential share earning potential beyond tier 1, an agent must be the minimum number of frontline qualifying active agents in his or her revenue share group. Now, if you're anything like me, the first 10 times that you're gonna hear that, it's gonna make 0 sense. You're not gonna know what language they're talking about. You've been told that revenue share is simple, yet here we are talking about FLAs, FLQAs, GCI of $5,000 and on and on. So let's dig in. This is where it gets fun. I promise you, you're gonna understand this by the time we get through. What this is saying is that in order for eXp to categorize one of your agents that you sponsor personally to be an FLQA, that agent needs to close at least $5,000 in GCI in the prior rolling 6-month period. So essentially, if an agent closes a transaction, there's about a 6-month window that agent is now considered an FLQA as long as that transaction was over $5,000 in gross commission income. So that's why when you're part of eXp, there's going to be a difference between the FLA, so frontline agents, and FLQAs in your organization, because there may be a period where one of your agents does not close a transaction for at least 6 months. So they stop being an FLQA and become an FLA instead. Now, of course, you don't want that for any of the agents that you sponsor, but we understand that life happens. So yes, fundamentally, if one of the agents that you sponsored goes on to have a drought of 6 months plus, yeah, that's gonna suck for them. But that's also gonna suck for you. And this is actually one of the biggest reasons that you wanna be so helpful, supportive, and really be there for your agents that you sponsor. Because once you have agents into various tiers like tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that FLQA count that you are having really matters. Now, as mentioned, that FLQA count needed column is the frontline qualifying agents, which are essentially agents that you personally sponsored. And in order for you to access this exponential share, you need the minimum FLQA count in each one of these tiers. So let's go back to the example of having 5 agents. Let's just say you have 5 agents and none of them have sold a thing. And each one of those 5 agents goes on to sponsor 1 agent apiece, which means that now you have 5 agents on that tier 2. However, since none of the agents that you personally sponsored went on to sell anything, none of them count as FLQAs. So on that tier 2 where those 5 agents are, again, only for those 5 agents, you don't have access to that exponential share because you did not meet the minimum FLQAs needed. So you only earn 0.2% of the overall commission generated in that tier. But now let's say those 5 agents that you personally sponsored were all rock stars, and each one of them becomes an FLQA, a frontline qualifying active agent. And now using the same recruiting scenario, each one of them sponsors an agent apiece, which exactly like the previous example, you now have 5 agents on tier 2. Being is that now you have access to that exponential share because now you meet the 5 minimum FLQA count required. So instead of you only profiting 0.2% on that tier 2, you can now add an additional 3.8% on the adjusted gross commission income. So now in that tier, you have a total of 4% AGCI. Because you can easily sponsor 100 agents personally, which is something that I did within 12 months. But if most of them don't go on to produce anything, not only is their revenue share not available to you, but also your FLQAs is really, really low. So as you start duplicating and those agents start adding other agents themselves, you can quickly find yourself with a ton of agents in your revenue share group. But you might find yourself not maximizing your revenue share organization because your frontline agent count is pretty small. Now, at the beginning, I referenced that there were some monumental changes that literally overnight changed revenue share. And one of those changes was Accelerate, which is available in all 24 countries where eXp Realty operates and applies to agents who joined on or after March 1st of 2023. So this only applies to the newer agents at the organization. This Accelerate program automatically opens revenue share tiers 2 and 3 for 12 months beginning September 7th of 2023, creating the opportunity to have 10 frontline qualifying agents immediately. So what this essentially says, once you join eXp, you instantly have tier 1, 2, and 3 open for you. So if you go on to sponsor 1 agent and that agent is an absolute savage and sponsors 10 agents, previously you would only have access to 0.2% of that gross commission income. But given that you've been awarded that extended grace for those first 12 months, you now have the entire tier 2 open. So you are directly benefiting from their production in the exponential share percentage right out of the gate. And the same thing applies for tier 3. This one single move alone is essentially saying that eXp is now going to pay millions more in revenue share, where previously those newer agents, well, it took them time to build up to that level of FLQAs. But now agents can come into the organization with the benefits of, on paper, being treated as if they have 10 FLQAs. Now that in and of itself is a monumental change. But what's even crazier is what happened earlier on this year. There was another massive change that affected everybody at eXp. And truly the agents that benefited the most was those agents that had been with eXp a little bit longer. Those agents that you would consider having a deep revenue share. meaning those agents that have been part of eXp for a little bit longer and had already achieved some sort of duplication, where a majority of their revenue share was in tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, and tier 7. So that's what I mean by a deep revenue share. Most of their reward is down at the bottom. And that change was when the tier 7 FLQA threshold was reduced from 40 FLAs to 30. The moment that happened, millions and millions and millions of additional revenue share dollars was paid out literally overnight, because there were so many agents that just could not get to 40 FLQAs. So all of their hundreds into thousands of agents on tier 7 were only paying them 0.5%. Well, the moment that the FLQA threshold was changed from 40 to 30, overnight, they now were receiving 4.5% additional in revenue share from everybody in that tier 7. That's 9 times more in that tier. So some agents from month to month went from making 4 figures every single month to 5 figures, from 5 figures to 6 figures and onward. Now, we all know presently what's going on in the real estate market and how challenging growth is. So compare what eXp did in increasing their payout and revenue share versus what other brokerages are doing, such as laying a ton of people off, or let's be frank, slashing their profit share, which I think now is actually the appropriate time to talk about the difference between revenue share and profit share. Now, I'm not an accountant, but at the most basic level, revenue share is off the top and profit share is off the bottom, assuming that there is some profit to be shared. So under the revenue share program, which eXp operates, once you sponsor an agent and that agent goes on to close a transaction, that following month, you're getting paid via revenue share. Versus on the profit share model, you have to factor in all of the expenses and you're hoping that there's a profit at some point in time. So you're certainly not getting paid out on production that quickly, and you're also not getting paid out that much. So what you have to look at the end of the day is if you're going to be sponsoring agents or recruiting agents, you have to know the distinction. And you also have to keep into consideration, if you go on to sponsor 100 agents or recruit 100 agents, under which model would you rather have them in? Would you rather have them under a revenue share model or a profit share model? At the end of the day, which one's going to benefit you the most? Now, I do need to be transparent. There are other brokerages out there that operate a similar revenue share model that eXp Realty pioneered. In fact, if you want me to be very candid, you're going to see some former execs, some former brokers, and some former agents going off and joining those brokerages, because they see that as another opportunity to get on the ground floor of what eXp Realty was. But in my opinion, what they fail to realize is that if they weren't really that successful at recruiting under eXp Realty, it's going to be so much more challenging to do that in another setting. But to each their own, that's just how I personally see it. What I really appreciate about the model that we're in right now is that we are profitable. We're the fastest growing brokerage in the world, which means that I have access to all 50 states. And so I'm able to attract agents from all 50 and over 20 countries as well, that I also get to benefit from in a revenue share perspective. So I can quickly grow across state lines and country lines without any issue. And with time, my revenue share organization will continue to grow as well, which means that when I'm ready to retire, as long as I have an active real estate license hanging with eXp, and I'm paying just the minimum $85 a month, I am generating income, passive income. And when I myself go on to pass, aka when I die, I'm able to will this asset over to my family. Now, if you're interested in tapping into this very revenue share stream and actually see results, check out the link down below, because I want to share with you how partnering with us, the Agent First Group, you're able to make over 20% more in 90 days, all while working 5 to 10 hours less per week.